The history of Mongolia begins deep in the prehistory of humankind. Archaeological findings show that as early as 40,000 years before Christ, humans lived in the territory of present-day Mongolia. These early groups were hunter-gatherers who adapted to the extreme climate of the Eurasian steppe. By at least 10,000 years before Christ, a distinct nomadic way of life had developed, based on mobility, hunting, and later animal husbandry. Around 3,000 years before Christ, Bronze Age cultures emerged, demonstrating advances in metalworking, tool production, and social organization. The horse gained increasing importance and became a central element of Mongolian culture, as it enabled mobility, trade, and military strength. From approximately 1,000 years before Christ, larger nomadic tribal confederations began to form. Particularly influential were the Xiongnu, who established a powerful steppe empire between the 3rd century before Christ and the 1st century after Christ. They maintained continuous contact with the Chinese Han Empire, both through warfare and diplomacy, and significantly influenced China's border policies, including the expansion of the Great Wall. After the collapse of the Xiongnu, other powers followed, including the Xianbei and later the Rouran Khaganate, which controlled large parts of Mongolia between the 4th and 6th centuries after Christ. The Rouran were the first to establish the title Khagan, expressing supreme rule over multiple tribes. In the 6th century after Christ, they were replaced by the Turkic Khaganate, which created a vast empire stretching from Mongolia to Central Asia. In the 8th century after Christ, the Uyghurs assumed dominance. They developed a comparatively stable administration, promoted trade along the Silk Road, and integrated religious influences such as Manichaeism and Buddhism. After the collapse of the Uyghur Empire in the 9th century after Christ, a prolonged period of political fragmentation followed. This period ended in the late 12th century after Christ with the rise of Temujin, later known as Genghis Khan, born in the year 1162 after Christ. Through military reforms, strict discipline, and a binding legal system, he succeeded in uniting the Mongolian tribes. In the year 1206 after Christ, he was proclaimed Great Khan of all Mongols. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongol Empire emerged in the 13th century after Christ and grew into the largest contiguous land empire in world history. It extended from East Asia to Eastern Europe. The Mongols promoted trade, religious tolerance, and communication between East and West, among other means, through an extensive postal and road system. After the death of Genghis Khan in the year 1227 after Christ, the empire gradually fragmented into several khanates, including the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in the Middle East, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in Eastern Europe. In the 14th century after Christ, the Yuan dynasty collapsed, causing the Mongols to lose control over China. Within Mongolia itself, centuries of internal power struggles followed between different tribal groups, particularly between the Khalkha Mongols in the east and the Oirats in the west. In the 16th century after Christ, Tibetan Buddhism became the dominant religion and profoundly shaped society, politics, and culture. From the 17th century after Christ onward, Mongolia increasingly came under the control of the Chinese Qing dynasty. Inner Mongolia was directly integrated into the Qing Empire, while Outer Mongolia retained limited autonomy but remained politically dependent. This situation lasted until the beginning of the 20th century after Christ. Following the collapse of the Qing dynasty, Mongolia declared its independence in the year 1911 after Christ. After a period of political instability and foreign influence, a revolutionary government supported by the Soviet Union prevailed in the year 1921 after Christ. In the year 1924 after Christ, the Mongolian People's Republic was proclaimed. Until 1990 after Christ, Mongolia was a socialist state with a single-party system and a centrally planned economy, closely aligned with the Soviet Union. Since 1990 after Christ, the country has undergone a largely peaceful transformation into a parliamentary democracy. A new constitution guaranteed political rights, free elections, and the separation of powers. At the same time, the difficult transition from a planned economy to a market economy began, initially accompanied by significant social and economic challenges. In the following decades, Mongolia opened itself internationally. In addition to maintaining close relations with Russia and China, it pursued a so-called third neighbor policy, aimed at building political, economic, and security partnerships with Western states and international organizations. From the early 2000 years after Christ onward, resource extraction became the most important economic foundation, leading at times to strong economic growth, but also to dependency, corruption, and environmental problems. Despite recurring political crises and economic fluctuations, Mongolia has remained comparatively stable as a democracy. Challenges such as social inequality, environmental degradation, urbanization, and economic dependence persist to this day. Mongolia is a sovereign democratic state that seeks to preserve its political independence between the great powers of Russia and China, while striving to balance economic development, ecological responsibility, and the preservation of its cultural identity and nomadic traditions.